Loud. Okay. Hello and welcome to the Tie-Dyed Therapist. I'm your host, Richard Killian. And today I have a very special guest. His name is Ken Coscia, and he is a trainer for the Silva Method. He's been doing it for 53 years now.
Yeah.
He teaches people a lot about how to take better care of themselves. He's a master meditator, I would say. He's been around a long time. He has a lot of wisdom to share, and that's why I wanted him on my show today. Just as a point of clarification or disclosure, actually, I actually had some coaching from Ken about 3 years ago after I saw him on a podcast with Brian Scott. I was very intrigued by what he had to say about the Silva Method. I wanted to learn more. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend any of his workshop retreats, which I still have to go to at some point. But Ken was kind enough to do some coaching with me for about 3 months, and I got a great deal out of it. And I'm so happy I get to see my old friend again. So, how are you doing, Ken?
Uh, as we say in the old country, better and better.
Better
Life
and
is good.
better.
And even to clarify that, Richard, I remember that I usually don't, as you remember, I told you, work with people because I do minimal coaching. I'm mostly doing trainings. I
Yeah,
travel internationally, and I mostly work with people who have been through training with me to build on what they started. But you made a very convincing case for you and I working together, and I have no regrets. It was delightful,
thank you.
and part of the point is what you said about being a master meditator. I
Yeah,
want full disclosure here. There are a lot of thought leaders out there who, I'll just say many people know what I'm referring to, who, I don't know, give this illusion of being so grandiose and perfect, and life is. And let's face it, we're all facing a lot of challenges. We all have stuff in our lives, family and friends,
that's true.
children. And I often tell people, I'm here to learn just like you are. And the only difference between me and you and your listeners is I have a lot of training, a lot of experience. I've worked with hundreds of thousands of people in this
Yeah,
modality, and it doesn't makes me far from perfect. I feel like the more I know, the less I know, because it's a process, growing and
it's
evolving.
true. That's true. So, when I use the word master, I guess that's maybe misleading. I guess what I really meant to say was experienced, right? Because I don't know if anybody completely masters meditation, but people get better at it the more they do it, right?
Well, it's a good compliment. Thank you. Because we have levels of mastery.
Yes.
People listen to somebody playing the violin. We just came back from Quebec, and somebody who looked like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Harpo Marx, one of
Yes, I remember him.
one of the couples with us. The woman plays the harp too. She's a beautiful harpist. And listening to him play, I mean, people see that and say, wow, if I could play like that. And what they don't stop to think about is this is an example of somebody who's masterful because of years and years and years of practice and dedication to what it is they're interested in. And and that's the point, is that
Yeah.
we all have incredible human potential. And when we have a guide, so to speak, an instruction manual, if you will, we can harness that. And that's been one of my joys is I'm not
Yeah.
giving people anything other than training and teaching them a skill set that helps them, that empowers them in such a way that they can really take command of their life and navigate life with a bit more grace and ease. And
Yes. Right.
like
Right.
yourself, juggling, with between your children and your family. And
Yeah, I wish I could say I do it with grace and ease, but that's not always true,
of course not.
Um,
And anybody who says it is, I'll be polite and say they're exaggerating.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So we were trying to figure out of all the things that we could talk about today, you came up with the perfect title, which is Roadmap to Creating a Better Future.
Mhm.
And I love the title, but I'd like to hear more about, in your mind, what you meant by that.
Sure. Like anything, we know roadmap. Nowadays, I'm still adjusting to it, I admit. We have Google Maps and we have maps and all sorts of and ways to give us a guideline so we can plot our course. What's the best way to get to where we're going with that? It's the same
Mhm.
thing in our lives, is that life is one big destination, a journey, if you will. And I don't so much think about happiness as much as fulfillment, feeling at peace with ourselves, feeling fulfilled. And in order to lead a more fulfilling life, in order to to enjoy, yes, the finer things. Again, I guess I'm a different thought leader in that so many of the thought leaders are always talking about money, 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 and and how to do this and their fancy car and their plane. And I like to chunk it down more to simplicity. Is that sure, that's great. I like driving a nice car too. I like finer things, but it's not what I live for. So part of what the roadmap, why I call it that, is there are skills that are necessary for you, for me, for all of us. And without these skills, we're gonna stumble. Without these skills, we're gonna have trouble. And some of it is common sense. And as I heard somebody once say, just because it's common sense doesn't mean it's common practice for you.
Oh, that's good.
So, for
Right.
example, I just outlined the four skills, and then we'll dive into, with respect to the time that we have, what we can do. So, for example, this is a framework that we use all throughout the Silva Method training. We call it the immersion experience. I call it the immersion experience of Silva Life and Intuition System. And it's a coursework like everything else, 4 days. But the four skills, let me just mention them and then we'll come back and go a little deeper into it.
Okay.
And I would first ask people to think, I know everyone knows this. Would you agree, to our listeners, and you, Richard, if you're feeling stressed, worried about your children, worried about what's going on in the world, the high levels of uncertainty, and we're thinking, what if this and what if that and what if this, and then we're preoccupied, and then maybe we've got aches and pains, and we're not. What usually happens is we then have trouble sleeping. That's common. It's amazing to me how many people have
Right.
trouble sleeping or staying asleep. But we're not at our best. It's nearly impossible to be at our best, to be in our A game, to be there for each other. So many people are coming home from work or finishing a day's work, even if they're working remotely, and they're wiped, they're exhausted, they're drained, and they don't have the time to be present with their loved ones, to have
Mhm.
time to be with their children. My children are grown, but I have young grandchildren, and I want to be present with them. And in order to be fully present and energetic and wrestle with them, I've got to be on my A game and have my stuff together, so to speak. So, and people are more likely to make mistakes. It's the number one reason why, skill number one, the lack of having this skill is the number one reason why people are not creating the life they want. It's the number one reason why people's marriages probably fail, why people make big mistakes. And that is not managing their energy, not being able to manage their physical, mental energy, their emotions in a way that they stay strong, that they, not perfect, but they can move through life more gracefully, that it doesn't disable them.
And sleep is a major component of that.
All the research shows, I've been studying this since I started in 1971.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colin. When I was 19 years old, and we need a minimum, all the research shows, minimum 7 hours to 9 hours of sleep each and every night.
Mhm.
And it also needs to be quality sleep.
Right. Right.
Big reason why people are not sleeping, having trouble getting to sleep, or staying asleep and getting back to sleep when they wake up is stress, preoccupation, worry, tension. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives us something to do, but gets us nowhere. And so the first skill set would be, which and I'm going deeper into it now, maybe it's better to do it this way, is is to be able to manage that energy in such a way to deal with the stressors, because the only people free of stress are no longer with us physically. They've passed on.
Yes.
And to be alive, I mean, you could be reclusive on a mountaintop, but if you put on the TV or you go on social media or you even have any contact with loved ones, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on that gives us pause and concern. And we should be concerned. I'm not talking about rosy, oh, life is grand and
Yeah,
wonderful.
right.
But if we get caught up in the excessive worry of it and thinking, what if this and what if that, then we become disabled mentally because our thoughts are
Yeah.
a catalyst to our feelings. And those feelings, those emotions cause the brain to release neuropeptides and neurochemicals that influence our behavior, the quality of our behavior, the quality of our thoughts, the quality of how our tone of voice, how we interact with people. You know, we've all been there. When we're
Mhm.
stressed, worried, we're reactive. And when people are in survival mode, they're reactive. It's not defensive. The brain takes over the back part of the brain, and you lose access to your intuitive wisdom, and we lose access to our higher thinking functions of the brain, and we're more likely to be defensive and say things we wish he hadn't said to somebody who means the most to us in the world. I'm sure everybody has done that at least
Right.
once.
And meanwhile, the problems are not getting solved.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
you, without going deeper, you as a therapist, as a counselor, as a coach in the good work that you're doing, it doesn't mean that you're perfect and you're free of these concerns. So you've got to be clear headed, so to speak. You've got to be emotionally centered and balanced in a way so that you can be there for your clients, so that you can hear them and really connect with them and bring out your wisdom in a way that serves them. And that's not going to happen if we're preoccupied excessively. And it's interesting. I'm
Well,
not a therapist, but
right.
these days in my classes, in a class, I limit the class to 50. And in a
Yeah.
class of 50, there are a minimum of 3 psychologists in the class,
Oh, isn't that
3
interesting?
neuroscientists,
Yeah. Right.
more and more medical doctors in the class, lots of coaches, even sometimes trance mediums. It's quite a diverse group of people.
Yeah.
And I'm in awe. I'm so honored by it because some of these people are top of the game. There's a woman, you'd love this, Richard, 84 years old, and she's a clinical psychologist still practicing.
That's great. That's
Not as
great.
much. I just went to a birthday party. A good friend of mine is 80, still practicing. He lives in New Jersey. Well, but my point is that first skill, we've got to be able to, we can't make it go away, but we can work with it in a way that it doesn't. So some takeaways, quick takeaways. Everybody hears about breathing, breathing, of course. When we breathe slow and deep belly breathing, when people are stressed, they breathe shallow. When people are in high anxiety, their breathing is shallow. When people are depressed, their breathing is stuck, shallow breathing. And any
Mhm.
therapist watches the breathing, and it's a very healthy natural antidote to. It's not make everything go away, but it's an antidote. It's like a natural medicine we have within us, because the slow deep breathing helps the body produce more dopamine, more serotonin, which helps us to feel better with that. But going for a walk,
Right.
self-care is so important, isn't it? And I
Well,
recommend.
the breathing is so important because, you talk about shallow breathing, right?
Mhm.
That's really a signpost for people who are wondering how stressed they are. If they can't breathe deeply, if they can't get to that lower diaphragm level in their breathing, then it's a sure sign that something's going on in their life that they're worried about.
Exactly.
And as a therapist, what I will tell you is that when you're talking about that first piece about your energy, when what happens for therapists all the time is we sit with people, and if we're not taking care of ourselves,
Mm.
it becomes very apparent because you sit with somebody's pain, you sit with somebody's stress, and you recognize that that stress is also in you. And of course, the client or the patient never sees that. They never see what's going on, on the other side.
Mm.
But I know as a therapist, when I'm stressed out, when I'm not taking care of myself, it's almost like the client is reminding me to take care of myself,
Mm.
if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm I'm in the same boat. As
right.
a, you call me a trainer. I'm more of a facilitator. We
Mhm.
call ourselves Silva Method instructors. I think of it more as a facilitator because there's so many books written about it and home studies. It's facilitating an experience. And when I'm centered, balanced, clear, I do a better job. It's that,
Yes, right.
and and so
Yeah.
a second skill set, and I will call it a skill, is to know what you want, to be
Mm.
clear about your intention, your goals, and stay focused on them. So, for example, I'm sure as you're listening to this, folks, you've had an idea, yeah, and then somebody talks you out of it. Or you start, some people have a habit pattern of they start but don't complete things. They have
Yes.
great ideas, but they're not willing to do what it takes. And is that because they don't care? No, I think not. In most cases, people do care. People are genuine. It's just that if people are not taking the time, and I'm not into spiritual meditation per se, but meditation where you get your body balanced, where you get out of stress mode, you literally are rewiring your brain, firing and wiring by getting out of survival mode and allowing yourself to create a state of being where you feel good, you think more clearly, and you're accessing more of your higher thinking functions, your intuition. And if our goals are not in alignment with our values, so some people find themselves, they feel trapped because I've got to pay the bills. You know,
Oh,
I've got to
oh,
work. It's easy for you. They say you love what you do. Oh, really?
yeah,
I've been
right.
self-employed, raising a family. And when you're self-employed, it's very risky. You don't,
Oh, it sure is.
if I
Right.
don't show up, there's bupkis, there's nothing there. And in my early years, we struggled a lot because I was on a mission doing this, and it's not the typical business per se. So it's important that people are clear about who's important to them, what's important to them, what their values are, and that our goals that we set are in alignment with those values because that's how we motivate ourselves. When we recognize both the intrinsic and extrinsic benefits. So how
Mhm.
will it benefit, you know, I tell this to business people all the time. Lately, I'm getting all these business owners in class or people who want to attract a soulmate. And the first thing I'll say to them is, what do you bring to the game? What's the benefit? Why would anybody want to
Right.
have a relationship with you? Or why would anybody want to hire you for your services? Why would anybody want for that? I don't mean that judgmentally. I just mean, what are your benefits? What is your area of expertise? How can you
Yeah,
help?
right.
And then, of course, how will it benefit you, your family, or anyone you care about? And when we have that and we're in alignment and it's consistent, it's easier to stay focused on the goals, and then we're more likely to recognize opportunities that help us to get where we need to go, that or recognize steps to take, or training to take, or book to read, or someone who could mentor us, around that goal. So again, it goes back. You said, the joke about being a master meditator. I guess there's truth to that, and that I've been meditating with dynamic meditation, which combines the benefits of passive meditation and creative visualization. And also, it's important that we monitor. Part of skill 1 and 2 is we pay attention to the inner dialogue. So I would say, everybody,
Mm-hmm.
listen, the takeaway is when you have a positive thought, when you have a meaningful thought, when you have a hopeful thought, does that little monkey mind say, oh, really? Come on now, Richard, Kenneth, you've been there before. Give me a break. But, and it's that immediate knee jerk reaction that tells the truth about what we're really feeling inside, not what we impose upon us. Because, we use affirmations, we mentally rehearse how we want to be. It's a good thing and it works, but it's also us consciously imposing that, shall I say, on ourselves. It's those knee jerk reactions when we're not paying attention, when we think of something, that inner dialogue, the way we talk to ourselves, the way we respond to life's challenges, the way we think about them, that gives us clarity about what's really going on inside.
Right. It's the
So
perspective. Right.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. And I'll be the first. My reputation is people seem to like that I'm very authentic. I tell them I've been told I should promise more because it's such an amazing program that I'm blessed to teach. And many of those people who told me I should promise more no longer do this work. And I'm still here 53 years later, because I believe in telling the truth because it's not easy. I don't care what skills you have. Sometimes it's just not easy, but it becomes easier when we have these skills and we can take the time. So the self-care piece, like you said, we got to take care of ourselves, go for a walk, have a nice meal, make sure we're sleeping, be careful with social media, not to be doing it late at night before bed. Forget emails. People send me emails at 10 o'clock at night. I don't do emails late at night because I'm going to bed and I can't handle anything until the morning.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
why am I going to do it now, for that? So those two, the first one may be the most important. Should I go on to a third one, which because kind of
Yes, please. Yeah. So the first one was about your energy, right?
managing your energy.
And
Second
the
one,
second one,
know what you want and stay focused on it.
right.
By
So that was about intent.
right, your intention. Well, intention is more the big picture. So, for example, as a young man raising a family, my goals were that I could support them. 3 children went through college. My daughter's a clinical psychologist. It takes a lot. And my goal was that they could do it and we would be free of debt and not have to play that
Yeah, right. That's tough.
that game. And we did it,
Right.
for that. So goals usually have very specific targets, very specific. Some people have a goal they want to take 5 pounds off or whatever it might be. Some people have been, a nagging health challenge and they want to improve their health. But the intention is more the big picture. It's more why do you do what you do? So for example, people say, how can I've done hundreds and hundreds of these classes? And I don't mind saying is that the reason why I'm still here is because I truly believe that as you and I are just a little bit better, a little bit kinder, a little bit more patient, a little bit more compassionate with each other, boy, we're going to be easier to live with. My wife is going to have a better life if I'm not overreacting and stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
and the
right.
children. And that's not possible if we're in stress mode and if we're in survival mode. So that's why these skills are important to help us to bring out our best and to be there. And I believe then that as we do that with our family, our friends, our community grows, like the community you serve. I saw one of the invites you had to share at one of the, if you don't mind me mentioning, one of the local
No,
churches.
please go ahead.
Man, I was really proud of you. I was like, all right, you did it. You did a great job. But those people that are counting on you to somehow inspire them in a way that they connect and they're going to step forward. Because even, by the way, neuroscience shows the number one most important thing for all of us necessary is, you could probably guess, more than anything. People say, oh, meditation. People say, walking. It's faith. Having the faith, and I don't mean that necessarily religiously, but having the faith that we're not alone and that we somehow, some way will figure things out. So to respect people's backgrounds, whether it be God, universe, source energy, who am I to say what it is? But I do believe, I'm a person of faith, that we are far more than what we believe. And that's the big picture. That's the big
Yeah,
what. That's the intention. And we're all kind of moving in that direction to have a more fulfilling life. And and I'm happy to say I've succeeded in creating that. That's why I do what I do. I'm
yeah,
surrounded by people
right.
making that effort. Probably why you do what you do, and they're far from perfect, but it's a lot of fun. It feels good. We have a blast.
Yeah.
Make good
Well,
connections.
it's faith, but it's also faith that helps create confidence. The self-confidence that you're describing, right? That yeah, I have problems. I have struggles. I can get through these things. I have resources. I have, my inner resources to help me with this. It doesn't just have to be, you know, um, giving up so quickly.
Good.
That's really a lot of
Yeah.
that, right?
You must be psychic. This is great. We've always had, by the way, listeners know when we worked together coaching, I felt like I knew you and that you had been through the class with me because it felt, I think you felt the same way, but I sure did. There was a nice roll, a nice flow. And skill number 3,
Yeah,
if you've done any reading in personal development, folks, any, you've heard this, change your limiting beliefs.
yeah.
We know that a belief is an attitude we have about what we think we can or cannot do. It's also a belief, like I have a belief that we're not alone. I really, I mean, I'm not going to claim, I was raised in a dogmatic Roman Catholic background. We had a pope in our lineage way back. My cousin, my second cousin, was ordained in St. Pat's Cathedral. But moving away from the dogmatic aspect, when we're in alignment with that energy, so to speak, that flow, that source, it seems almost magical. And so, what you just said, having that faith, the surest way to change a limiting belief is to have confidence in ourselves that somehow, some way we can figure this out. And by the way, 15,000 plus fMRIs, brain scans were done by
Yeah,
Dr. Andrew Newberg at University of Pennsylvania. Mark
right.
Robert Waldman is a friend reporting it. And this is what they found in terms of neuroplasticity, in terms of the health of the brain. With that will keep us open because when people have hope like that, they're more likely to take action. They're more likely to study. They're more likely to ask for help. They're more likely to hire a therapist. They're more likely to talk with a friend and say, hey, can I talk with you about this? And they won't, just clam up and wither away for that. And they're more likely.
Well, yeah. You know what I was going to say, Ken, is that about beliefs. I always tell people this, that I ask them, how do beliefs get formed? And most people don't know, right? And I say they get formed through time and repetition.
Mhm.
That's all it is. You
Yep,
can believe anything you want about anything. It doesn't even have to be true. It doesn't have to have any basis in fact or truth. But if you work at something long enough, hard enough, and you persevere in that, a belief will get formed, right?
absolutely.
And you're talking about neuroplasticity and wiring and all of that, right? That's what it takes. It takes time and perseverance. And there you are, instant belief.
That's a brilliant point you bring up. It really is. I'll call it, if you don't mind, simple brilliance. And at the risk of bringing up, I won't bring up politics, but the political climate, you'll notice that you could go to whatever it's left side or right side or God knows what, the party line, they have words that they all use and repeat. And you'll hear it in every form of the media that supports that premise. And they repeat it because they know people begin to, if they keep hearing it often enough, people begin to believe it. Repetition is key. So, may I add, in the same way it's been learned, you can unlearn it.
That's
When
right. That's
consciously aware of that
that's
and
right.
you have the tools. I've told
Mhm.
many a person the surest way to overcome stage fright, the surest way to overcome, the fear of failure is study, practice, get
Yeah,
some help, get some training, prepare, prepare, prepare. The
yeah.
more you prepare, then you can say, okay, baby, let's rock and roll. I've done everything I can do to,
Right.
to get ready, which is what you're saying, that repetition.
Well, I think the reason that you and I connect so well and why we did so well with coaching together was that, your background is the Silva method. My background is cognitive behavioral therapy.
CBT.
There's
Good.
so many interconnections between the two, right? Especially when we're talking about thoughts, how
Mhm.
thoughts are formed, beliefs, how people are wired, how to unwire somebody, how to reframe a situation. One of the things that you taught me, which I really appreciate, I've actually, incorporated this into my thinking, is um, there's this concept about imaginary conversations. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I always told people that, you should ask yourself when you're having an imaginary conversation with somebody, are they in the room with you? Because if they're not in the room with you, are you just talking to yourself? You know, like I always saw it from a very negative standpoint, because I think people sometimes play out entire dialogues with people. They play out fights, they play out all kinds of conflict, right? Because they want to get in the perfect zinger. They want to say just the right insult at the right time, except that those conversations never really quite materialize the way that we think they're going to. And then one day, you and I were talking about this concept of imaginary conversations. And you said to me something along the lines of, well, have you ever imagined having a positive conversation with somebody? Like saying, like starting out something in a more positive tone, really sort of creating the kind of conversation that something good could really come of it, right?
Mhm.
And I have to admit, I never had done that before until you said that to me. And do you remember that conversation we
Yeah,
had?
I do. I
Yeah,
do. That that's a big part of what we teach, which relates to skill number 4, is that it's a subjective communication, if you will. Is
yeah.
that, by the way, as a courtesy to people and full disclosure, the Silva Method is a system of tools and techniques. When I was at Boston University, I was a struggling student in engineering, flunking out, even though my academic background in Brooklyn was preparing me for engineering. And now I look back and realize I was worried. It's when I was at Boston University, I got worried. I was too caught up in, the stress of it. And that made things worse. But what happens is I have, through my study, I wound up getting a degree in managerial psychology. And I've been studying my daughter, who's a clinical psychologist. I tell her, a lot of people she's studying, I've been studying, reading their books. I've attended some trainings, but I don't have the degree. So it's my way of explaining the tools. It's what I bring to the game, so to speak, for people, because it's not per se the area of expertise with the Silva Method, because I find that it helps. So this imaginary conversation, people make things up and then they create this whole narrative and they make up this whole story. And it might be the farthest thing from the truth. Why haven't they called? Why didn't they do this? I did something wrong. And then, you make up this whole thing, with that. However, just to rewind, when we think like that, if we have a negative thought about somebody, a friend, lover, whoever, and we think they don't like, what we don't realize is our thoughts are a catalyst to feelings. So it
Yes,
causes us to
yes.
access emotions, which cause our chemistry to change, and the tone of voice will change, our face will change, the way we look, and we come across very differently. And hence, people often say, they walk away and say, Richard, did you notice something's up with him? I don't know. Something's different. I can't put my finger on it, but it just didn't feel right. Or people go to a networking meeting and they're introduced to somebody who's the best of the best, but they walk away saying, I don't know. I got a feeling something wrong here. He's like just too hungry or something. Turns out the guy just had a death in the family or a horrible argument with his spouse, something like that. And they didn't clear themselves and they came to the meeting preoccupied. And it
Yes.
affects, same thing, as a therapist, is if you're with a client, a patient, thinking, oh, excuse my language, oh, I'm going to clean up my potty mouth. This weekend, my grandson, 7-year-old, was saying, Dad, Grandpa, why do you use those words?
Oh, that's too bad. I wanted to hear them. Okay.
Well,
You
I
can
said, oh
clean it
crap.
up.
Oh God, what does she want now? Or what does he want now? And if we have that kind of an attitude, it's going to affect how we connect or don't connect with them. So that is a takeaway, folks. If you have a delicate conversation coming up, if you're going on a job interview, if you need to talk to somebody, you're the interviewer or the manager, and it's we'll call it a delicate conversation. Mentally rehearse it. Quiet yourself, use slow, deep breaths, and imagine you're there with that person. And you need to do this in a loving way, not a manipulative, but a kind way of, hey, so and so, this is, me, Ken, and I want to help. And I know we're having some difficult, just And if you have that, you'll amaze yourself, as you have found in your practice, I'm sure. I do this all the time with my coach clients or my students, and even they're not here, so I can say it, although they might watch the interview, my children in the past. Because I found that with children growing up, especially teenagers, the more I try to educate them how to live, the worse it would get. But when I stopped
Yeah.
doing that and have the conversation with them in my head, something changed and something shifted.
Even if we could just be more neutral, it would be helpful,
Absolutely, because we all
right?
have a bias. And that
Right.
bias, that perspective, again, our thoughts are catalyst to those feelings that affects everything.
Yeah, right.
A
Because
simple,
we jump to the negative so fast, and
that
and
type of environment.
sometimes honestly, we don't know why somebody wants to speak to us. We don't know why there's some sort of conflict. We don't understand what's going on. We don't have the facts. And so if we could just even like step into it with more of a spirit of curiosity, a neutrality, we would be better off, right? It doesn't always
Sure.
have to be glowing, positive, nice, but it does have to be more steady.
Yeah, and again, my friend, you're spot on with that. Things are not always what they appear to be, and everybody has their stuff. And again, that inner dialogue, being very careful about how we think and how we talk. The fourth skill would be along these lines about recognizing that we are not just physical beings; we are spiritual beings, Teo Dashada, having a physical experience.
In a physical body,
And
right?
Wayne Dyer popularized that. People think it was his quote. It's not. It was Teilhard de Chardin. And even way before Teilhard de Chardin, spiritual leaders from just about every religion and denomination have in so many words said that to us to quiet, us, that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. So let's make the most of it. So a term that's used a lot is intuition. In the same way
Yes.
that we have logic and reasoning and excuse me, verbal skills, we also have subjective skills, inner thinking, and we also have perceptions. And I'm not talking necessarily about body language perception, looking at someone's face or whatever, but also things that are what they appear to be. So you gather the facts, you evaluate, you assess what's going on, and sometimes the facts aren't all there. And you might be guided with your intuition. And I'm sure you probably do because you're very intuitive and you're a very caring guy. At least that's my perception of you, Richard, that you're very caring and very compassionate. So I could just picture you with your patients that you come up with things sometimes and maybe after the session walk away saying, where did that come from?
Well, you know what happens? This is so funny that you say this. This is how my wisdom card deck came about. I would sit with people and I would get a phrase in my head, some crazy little phrase. And, like I'd be sitting with somebody, and the next thing I would hear in my head is red flags, or, some question, like, is this for my greater intent or something like that? And in the course of the session, I would say to somebody, I had this thought. I want to share it with you. You tell me if it resonates. And I would share it, and almost every time they would say, "Oh yeah, that's exactly right." And I never could figure out like why that happened the way that it did, except that um, I think it just takes you have to sit with people and be so focused on what they're saying to you. You have to get you have to feel the emotional state. You have to, it's the vibe, it's the energy, like you were saying in the very first stage, right? You have to catch the energy. And then once you catch the energy of it, then your intuition pops into play a lot of times.
Yeah, and some of it's within the domain of your life experience, within the domain of your professional experience. You recognize patterns and then they lead
Right.
to something else. When I do a class, I send out everybody a questionnaire and it's amazing. Some people write me 4 pages. Wasn't intended for that. Well, I'm asking personal questions. It's completely confidential, just me and them. And I read each and every one of them with a pen, and things jump out. And it helps
Yeah,
me prepare to make,
right.
to make it more meaningful. But that the point is what you said before, the science piece. Remember, folks, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm coached by neuroscience researchers and so on, but it neurologically, the way we are wired, because number one priority is survival and then security, it is much, much easier to be negative. The way we're wired, by default, people go to the negative because of the survival and security instinct. If we're conscious of that and mindful of it, we can manage it and not get controlled by it. So self-awareness in your CBT, self-awareness is so important to recognize that. So again, it goes back to that we're spiritual beings and we have subjective faculties.
Right.
And when you're working with someone, and by the way, I salute you for the card deck.
Oh, thank you.
I can't tell you, every class, somebody says, would you repeat that? And I say, what? Can you repeat it for me? You get on a roll. And if you record it, that's better, or somebody records it for you, that's brilliant, because I cannot remember how many times, because when you're out of survival mode, when you're out of stress mode, you're more likely to access your intuitive wisdom. You're more likely to access your higher thinking functions of the brain. However you want to think of it, you're more, what now is recognized psychologically and even neurologically, a flow state. And that's the 4th skill, learning how to sustain a flow state where it seems like the universe has got your back. We in Silva have always called it your intuition. Used to be called ESP, but that's got
Yeah,
too much baggage attached to it thanks to Hollywood
definitely. Right.
and myths about it. All it is a higher thinking function of the brain, where you don't have all the objective evidence or the empirical evidence or the logical facts, but you just know. I always use this as an example, if you don't mind. You ever watch the original NCIS? Now in its
Oh, yes, yes, I remember that.
So you
Right.
remember Gibbs? We watched
Uh-huh.
it for Gibbs, and he was known for as a criminologist, we'll call him, an investigator, as Gibbs gut. And everybody knew Gibbs gut was wrong. But it's interesting to watch each and every show. They'd ask him, but he didn't say anything. He was very quiet. He gathered the facts. He waited till he gathered the facts to support his gut feeling. And often it proved him to be, well, remember, it's a show,
Right.
TV show, but we all do that in our lives. You get an instinct, a gut feeling about something, and then you research, and then you gather the facts as best you can around that.
Right.
And that
And
is a
most of the
skill
time,
set
we're
that can
pretty
be
accurate about it too. Right.
exactly. And it's a skill set. And everybody has this ability, and it can be trained. And that's frankly, that's part of my mission with the Silva Method, is to help people recognize you're far more than what you think, and that you can awaken this ability, and it can be trained, so that you know what's the distinction between wishful thinking and
Mhm.
intuition that you can really count on, or fear. Because when people are in fear-based thinking, it distorts the truth.
Definitely. So we covered all 4 things.
Yeah, we did.
All right.
Your help.
Well, I appreciate the time with you as always. I hope at some point later on we'll have another conversation about something because I think we have so many things in common, right?
Oh, I love it. I love talking about this. In fact, I've been had a lot of time off the recent weeks. I told you earlier. This
Yeah.
is for me to wake up.
Well, good. I'm glad I woke you up.
I'm
So,
moving into a very busy fall, so I want to really be there for people.
yeah. Well, listen, again, my thanks to you.
My pleasure.
And I hope if anybody has any questions or comments that they'll definitely put something, in my channel for this. And we're going to end it for the tie-dye therapist today. Thank you again, Ken.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure and honor.
Okay, so I got that. I got
Like
that.
that shirt, by the way.
Oh, that shirt. Yeah. So anyway, thanks again, my friend. I know you got to go do something, and
Yep.
I know I got to do
Very
something.
cool. Thanks for having me. This was fun. I enjoyed. I
Uh,
hope it did some good. By the way, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you get this up, you're going to send me a link to it.
Yes.
My question is, would it be possible? Is it okay with you if I put this on my YouTube channel?
Oh,
It'll
please.
give you some exposure,
Please
and then
do.
I can because you have your name, they can just Google you, like they can Google my name and
And
find out.
I can put your contact information over on my side too.
That'd be great.
Right.
So
Yeah,
whatever it takes, I just need the actual video so I can put it on YouTube.
of course. Yeah, I will send you the link. What's got to happen is that Zoom has to,
Yeah,
you
yeah, I
know,
know.
do
I
this
know.
whole thing, right? And then I'll get it over to you, okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. I think then I can, with that, I can then download it onto my laptop. If I
Yeah,
have trouble, I'll reach out to you and cry.
okay. All right.
Okay, take care of your
Hey,
family and give them a nice big hug.
thank you, Ken. Take care, buddy.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.